Alright, welcome to another Couch Talks with Nerdfather CJ, myself, Zill, and Rye Guy Ryan. It's been a little while since our last video. I got a horrible cold and it was terrible. So we're back now and hopefully we'll be able to get back to our once a week videos. If you like what we're doing though, always remember, subscribe, like, all that junk.
Obligatory YouTube outro, but at the beginning.
Yeah, basically. Today, though, we wanted to start talking about World of Warcraft, kind of a long-term-ish project that we want to do. We'd eventually like to talk about every expansion and the changes and our feelings on all that. But I think today we're just going to talk about our experiences with World of Warcraft, and we're going to try to keep it as positive as possible. So basically our positive experiences with World of Warcraft and our favorite classes, all that junk.
It'll start getting less positive as the, expansions go further and further forward.
Probably. So, Zill, how about you? Like, when did you start playing World of Warcraft?
During Classic, during Vanilla. I think the first year it was out.
So what did we decide? That's probably 2003,
really
2004?
Yeah.
2004. Yeah, that'd be about right.
Because the beta
we had just
was...
moved to Colorado, and it was this exciting new game my mom had when I was a kid. And I got to be Girl Legolas, but I had to be blue.
So
that
Troll
was my
Hunter.
First experience.
Got it.
No.
No, Night
I was
Elf.
a Night Elf.
Night Elf, crap. I think blue. I only played
Somebody plays horror.
I don't think I ever played an Alliance character. I think I briefly tried...
Oh, so you're telling me we have
Horde.
2 Horde players and an Alliance player.
I briefly tried...
Well,
yeah.
I really would like a faction that's just the Night Elves and the Tauren, and everybody else can just, maybe some trolls. Some of them.
Hey, the
Everybody else
troll
can leave us
druid
alone. Yeah.
shifts look so good.
They're
Yeah.
amazing. They're pretty great.
But anyway, so you started with a Night Elf Hunter, it sounds like.
Uh-huh.
Did you expand any other classes and enjoy them, or that was pretty much your go-to?
When Wrath hit, I made a lot of Death Knights. I would pretty much make a Death Knight and rampage through the starting zone, and then get bored with...
Yeah, okay.
red-brown outland zone that I just want to call Hellfire Citadel, and it's not the name of the zone.
Like the starting zone
For
them?
Outland.
Oh.
The first zone in Outland.
It is Hellfire. Hellfire Peninsula.
Thank you. Okay, yeah,
Yes.
I get bored with Hellfire Peninsula. Delete the character. Remake the exact same character. Rampage through the starting zone.
Hellfire Peninsula was great, minus the high levels that kept ganking and trying to control the 3
No, that was
objectives for Hellfire
pretty
Peninsula.
irritating. But yeah, no, mostly I played Hunter. I played Death Knight pretty much through the whole time I played up until I quit, toward the end of Legion. I tried other classes, but those were the 2 I liked.
Okay. I mean, I started playing in the beta. I had to download it over a dial-up connection because I lived 45 minutes out of town. So I got to play it for a week before the beta ended because of that. But it was really cool, and I played a lot of vanilla. And I mostly played Shaman. I was an Orc Shaman to begin with, and then I also had a Troll Shaman for a while. But when I wasn't playing Shaman, I would usually roll a Druid. I briefly tried the Wizard. I didn't really care about it. I like the classes that are able to do a little bit of everything. One of my favorite things about the Shaman at the time was that I had, 30 buttons on the screen, and I'm only going to, most of the time, use, maybe 10.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Shaman tank used to actually be a thing.
But, I could, basically do everything, not necessarily well, but I could do it. And as long as I knew my buttons and knew where they were on my screen. So that's one of the big things that really drew me into that class. And, I pretty much stopped playing right around the first expansion, partially because I moved out of town and got a job at a national park.
So even less internet?
Yeah, even less internet. And my computer also broke, so even if I had internet, it would have taken me a while to get my computer back up and going. I rejoined briefly when the Northrend expansion happened with the Death Knights and stuff.
That was
Right?
Wrath of the Lich King.
Wrath of the Lich King, yeah. I rejoined briefly, and it wasn't bad. I had a good time, but it just wasn't. I just wasn't feeling it at the time, really. And then I tried again a while after that. I don't remember what expansion it was or anything, but I remember.
Based on everything you've described to me, it was Canada.
Yeah, well, I remember logging in and looking at the suddenly 5 buttons I had, and I was like, "Cool, I'll go play Diablo 3, which has the exact same amount of buttons and is more fun."
That's not true. They might have. No, it is 3.
I briefly rejoined with you, and we played the overly long-awaited
the Demon Hunters.
Demon Hunter class, which I actually really liked the Demon Hunter class. The little bit I did play.
They were like a way more, as weird as it is to say, more agile rogue.
Yeah, but also kind of more. They were like a more DPS-y tank, but a more agile rogue at the same time. I really liked playing them. I didn't do any groups with them because we didn't play very long. It was actually, it was a good time, but I couldn't get myself back into the game for whatever reason. Maybe partially because now I'm an avid Final Fantasy XIV player and have been since it effectively first dropped. Redropped, I should say, because they had to shut her down and re-release it. But that's a different subject. How about you, Ryan? What class junk?
So I started in ICC and I played Death Knight really, really heavily. Towards the end of ICC, I eventually switched over to a Druid character, which was my main character that I leveled through most of the other expansions. I did start to main a Demon Hunter when... is that Legion? Yeah, when Legion dropped. And I thought it was a really interesting class, but it was really hard because it was like really easy with all the... You could like backflip and you could dash through and everything, but you had to be really good at flipping your character and your camera so that you're actually still hitting the character when you're actually phased through and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really fun to actually do that because it was, actually made playing the character a little bit harder. And
it was kind of unique compared to all the other classes that have been released in the game so far.
Yeah.
It was... No, I did enjoy what little I played of the Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
It was just kind of towards the end of my playing the game.
Yeah.
But I've at least dabbled in most of the classes except for I never really could get into the monk with just how that class was rolled because...
The monk is also pretty different. Like, I don't know. I tried the healer for a while. That was my horde character. Was a panda. Because, yeah. But I tried the healer for a while and it was very different from the other healers, I think.
Usually when I rolled a healer, like, I liked Resto Druid, but, I mean, Disc Priest was just so easy. It was just bubble everyone and smite spam heal and call it a day. It was a DPS heal class, and it was really easy to do.
Yeah, I briefly played the monk with Kitty, and it was a good time. I don't know. I didn't think it was that weird of a class, but I also didn't roll it as a healer. I think I rolled it as I was trying to roll it as a tank. I don't remember.
I think that Brewmaster was that, but it was my issue was it would drop the globes on the ground, so your entire play style was waiting for it to drop somewhere and make sure that you're picking up that kind of stuff. And one too many mechanics for me. Clearly, I fall into the category of I like the fewer buttons if can get away with it, but
that's fair.
Within reason.
Right, we released the demon into the other room.
Be free.
She's like, no way, that's scary. Just lean it against the couch and she'll figure it out.
Go on, Noah, you're a good girl.
Anyway, so I don't know. Like, I definitely I'm a huge World of Warcraft fan. I played Warcraft 1, 2, and 3 for hours and 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 hours of just way too much time. Love those games, love the story. I loved World of Warcraft when I was playing it way back in the day, especially in vanilla, because I got to actually play in this world, that I'd been playing in for so long before in the real-time strategy games. And they definitely took some liberties with the story compared to the Warcraft strategy games, but the strategy games also took some liberties with the stories amongst themselves, so it just happened because they just weren't really expecting to have a 2 and 3, it seemed like, which is fine. I've only actually read, I think, one Warcraft book, or maybe even just a small portion of it. I don't even remember.
Which one?
The one where Thor. Thrall, thank you, is on trial, I think.
Is on trial. Oh, you read War Crimes?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember it very well.
I thought I had War Crimes.
It is not on this app.
No, it's definitely not, but I'm pretty sure
Might be in
I
the
own
secret
it.
bookshelf.
If by secret bookshelf you mean buried in the pile of books in the garage that didn't make it back inside, then yes, that is what it seems to be. But
Super
I do
secret.
have it.
That's that way.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, no, it must be outside.
so I don't have any experience with the books, but I know that Zill has tons of experience with the books.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the books?
So, man, well, we have some books laid out here. I think War Crimes did a really good job filling in the gap between Pandaria and Draenor, which is unfortunate because, really that should be filled in the piece of media that you're filling that in for. But it was a fun read.
Did you find that
Just remembering all the debates I've got.
the books teach you, like, what the books taught you lore-wise compared to if you actively went through and grinded all the quests? They aligned, or are the books like to supplement the between the...
So, if you go through and do every quest, all the quests don't align. Warcraft's lore is a disaster. And has been kind of since day one, but I do agree that it's gotten progressively worse over time. So, for example, I remember, one of the reasons I stopped role-playing in WoW was because you get into these weird debates of I'd be like, well, my elf is 10,000 and 100-something. And then people would be like, well, then you weren't an adult during this war. It's like, yeah, this book says they're adults at 30. And it's like, well, this book says they're adults at 300. So which is it? It's both. Which one was published last? And then, yeah. So, I do think if you take them in the context of the time they were written and, the most recent lore, they usually are pretty good at supplementing the existing lore.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we'd like to tackle as we continue with this series, is the strange lore web that is just not accurate even amongst itself. And it's not even the kind of universe that has the excuse like Warhammer 40k. There are no real facts in Warhammer 40k because everything is propaganda.
Oh God!
So
they're all facts, just if you feel like they're facts.
Yeah.
It's
So
facts.
the facts of the Emperor are whatever, and then you find out that it's actually this completely different thing.
And then you also have orcs to complicate that.
Yeah, but anyway, that's a whole other universe. But but it's not that kind of universe that misinformation, the facts falling through, and not working together. It works because it was never established in any way. If that makes sense. Yes, it's a world at war, but everything's presented as fact, not as propaganda, not as legend, not as we don't say, oh, Thrall banded the orcs together and saved the orcs is the legend. No, that's what he did. We all know that.
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah. And then, he was a good leader, which is true to begin with, but became less and less true as he made more and more bizarro decisions.
That is That is one of the things I do really like about the books is in the game, you're always being fed information from the Horde or from the Alliance, whichever one you're on. Or occasionally from other factions, but usually from one of those. And so you're there, but then in the books you can get inside different characters' heads, and that gives you a very different perspective on it. So, like, I guess I'm not going to worry about spoilers. This is all old stuff. I haven't played the game in years, so it's your fault.
Oh yeah, I'll put a spoiler warning at the beginning of the video when I post it.
Okay.
You know, for those people who, for whatever reason, want to play World of Warcraft and haven't for some sort of bizarro...
It's good. Just stop after maybe Kata. Killing Deathwing was kind of fun. That happens, in case you didn't know. He does get, like, kind of, shoved into the maelstrom, but... Yeah.
I think there's a lot story-wise to appreciate in Pandaria also.
Yeah.
But
it's racist.
I mean, I think that the story...
Story-wise.
I think the story of World of Warcraft and the world and even a lot of the lore that they've come up with is really interesting and fascinating, because they have like their own version of the old ones. They have all this library of pretty great characters.
Yeah.
They have they've established so many cool and interesting things in the world, and it just seems like with the MMO, they just don't actually want to be creative with any of that. They just would rather have old characters continue to make weird, bizarre, and bad decisions.
Which is something you can see. It's like, hey, why make something completely new when we can just reskin this Drake 50 times? And, look, it's the regular Nether Drake, but we made it a little bit more solid and added little pointy crystals.
I mean, I'm kind of interested to see where Shadowlands takes us in the universe, because it seems like it's going to be a whole other world.
It seems like it's not going to be anything new.
Yeah.
They're just, you know what, we're tired of Durotar and all of that, and Kalendor, and we're just going to, open a portal and look, new place.
I mean, but that's okay.
The last couple expansions.
Yeah, but it's all about the undead, right?
Is it? I don't know.
That was what I've heard.
We assume from the overpowered,
All I know is that it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Because because they've established in the lore that it's possible to go to different worlds, and we've even been to a few of them in the MMO, or at least one or two of them. Even if those other alternate worlds were just different timelines of the same world, so it's possible to do all this cool stuff, and they just basically are like, no. Instead of you could literally. If I were the Alliance, I'd be like, cool, let's find other friendly worlds and make allies. So you could slowly build this entire universe at war situation, which would be really interesting. But instead they are too busy deciding that this new enemy old enemy is now corrupt again or something. It gets weird. But I don't know. All I know is that I'm a huge fanboy of the lore and World of Warcraft, despite the disaster they've made for themselves. And I'm a little ashamed, having said those words just now, that I haven't been able to get back into the game, ever. I've tried over the last 4 or 5 years.
I remember all that older content and get so nostalgic, because it was between that and maybe RuneScape, if you want to call that an MMO.
Yeah.
It's its own brand of interesting, but that was the first game that really got me into PC gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first real MMO that I really sat down and played, and for that reason, I think I really love it. But there's just it definitely dominated my young life, from 16, 17 onwards for a few years, but. So it's weird to me that whenever I try to go back and play it, I just can't seem to get into it, which for a lot of reasons that we'll try to not overly discuss in this particular video, but, having to do with the loss of controls, powers, buttons, options, and just stuff like that. Just designer decisions that just really kind of I feel worked against them, but
Yeah, it's just a abrupt shift from like the older people that have played the game and trying to bring them back in, or they can be like, well, we'll just slowly try to simplify the game and try to rebrand it to a new generation of World of Warcraft.
I don't ever think was overly necessary, because more and more people are playing games, and more people expect a certain level of like complexity when they enter a game, I feel like. And I don't think that level of complexity is necessarily going down in people's, idea of what they want. So I always get a little worried when any game is like, oh, we're going to simplify our UI or simplify our interface, because I'm like, guys, like, at this point especially, people have really grown up on media, Facebook and phone games and everything else. And like, if you're going to sit down and play an MMO, it's not fun to hit the same 3 buttons for the next 5 hours.
Yeah, I want my taskbar and all my procs bar, and then my I want 6 bars on the screen at any given time, and I'll adjust them as I please.
Well, and I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I feel like Final Fantasy is kind of right on that line for me, where sometimes I feel like they've gotten rid of too many options and buttons, but other times I'm perfectly content with the amount of options that I have for each class.
I think part of that too is they try to keep button bloat down because it's available on console, and while they do a very good job, you still only have, what is it? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars with 8 buttons each, so that puts a hard cap. And by default, it's not even 6; it's 4.
Yeah.
So there's just a hard cap on what you can have.
Yeah, and so it definitely, to an extent, it definitely makes sense, but so I just always get worried whenever a game is start talking about that kind of stuff. Yeah, that is a lot of buttons, and I feel like I think one of the biggest changes that we've seen at Blizzard, especially in recent years, but I feel like it may go even further back and just was kept behind closed doors a little bit better, was that they stopped designing for gameplay and for the player base a long time ago. I feel like they started designing for their pocketbooks. How can we pull in more players? How can we, how can we just make more money effectively was the question they were asking. And it wasn't, how can we make the game more fun, and how can we have, make the players enjoy the game more? Yeah, because, you see it in recent times with the MMO, where there's these fun, interesting concepts that were not intended to be used the way they're being used. I can't think of any good examples off the top of my head, but I know they're out there. And the players use them in ways that the designers didn't expect, and the designers come down on them and say, hey, stop that, and then they fix the bug, even though people are having fun with it.
It's a feature.
Yeah, I don't know, it's and when you're designing a game that big, you're going to get unintended consequences, and I think part of being a good designer and a good author of these kinds of games is embracing some of those quirks and letting them just live, because they're fun and they're harmless.
Bugs are fun.
Yeah, and I feel like the older versions of WoW were more about that kind of embracing the kind of unexpected and the those things like that, because that's what it kind of felt like. It really felt like an open world in vanilla way back when I was playing, because you could only have 2 professions, and you could you were limited to 1 class, but I was a shaman, so I could kind of do a little bit of everything, and then I had anything that I couldn't do, I made up for as a mechanic, because that was my profession. And it was a lot of fun. I had a great time with it, but unfortunately, I think that chapter of that particular game, at least currently, is closed. Yep. What professions did you guys have, though? Speaking of professions, because we didn't actually talk about that.
Skinning, leatherworking.
Skinning, leatherworking.
Most of my characters were herbalism, alchemy.
Okay.
I did have engineering on I think I went for engineering on a goblin rogue, which would have made it what? It had been Kata. I think when Goblin came out, I think Goblins came out with Kata.
Yeah.
So You had your little rocket jump for the class ability, and then you also had all kinds of miscellaneous crazy things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do love about WoW and their different races or their different racial powers, and I don't know how much they've changed since what I really remember, but I always really kind of enjoyed the different. The passives I didn't really care about as much usually, but like the activated ones were always a lot of fun.
Yeah, the only issue I ever really had with them is it was like it forced certain classes to take certain things.
Yeah.
So it was like,
or if you're doing PvP, you just roll a human.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was an orc, so I had the bloodlust one or whatever that upped my attack power.
Yeah.
So you could actually stack that with the shaman, and they could pump out crazy amounts of damage. Because at the time when I was playing, it would stack correctly, and you could push your attack power up to like well over 1,000 at really low levels.
For a while, Feral Druid could go stealth from Shadow Melds to restart the burst phase of their rotation.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fantastic. They now have a new ability in one of the later expansions where it was like King of the Jungle was like a hard cooldown where it was like for I think it was like a minute or something like that. You could pop in and out of stealth and reset your burst for the duration of that.
Okay. But yeah, I mean that's. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, the funny thing was nobody ever took the Panda passive into account, which was your food buff gets doubled.
Because your cook will always set out another feast or bounty, depending on whatever expansion it was.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, the cook will waste 100 gold to set down this table of food for you. Because when it's not on your dime, no one cares.
No, I don't know. So I really liked because the different flavors that
I think the
World of Warcraft was able to give to its races that way. Like Final Fantasy XIV, as the contrary or the other example here that we've talked about, the races, despite looking pretty massively different, pretty much all play exactly the same. Like they don't really have their own special powers.
Min Height Lullafell has magic Kugane jump puzzle powers.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, I've never actually tried changing the height and seeing if that affects anything.
But I mean, so you have the Lullafell, which are the effectively gnomes, which don't have anything special besides their stature and how they look, and you have the really really tall elves, which are the Elysian, which don't really have anything special except how they look and that they're really tall, which is just a different kind of approach to it, and one that I can appreciate for various reasons. But I do kind of wish that even if it was just like a relatively useless and harmless ability, that they had some kind of ability. I think that'd be really cool. Like even if as one of the bigger races, you could put one of the Lullafell on your shoulder or something. That would be cool. But it's just they don't do that, which is fine, I guess. But anyway, the idea of bringing up World of Warcraft, though, is, eventually we want to really do a deep dive into each expansion and some of the kind of how the expansion progressed and how the abilities changed and the lore changed. And we'll try to do one expansion per video, though I suspect it might become 2 to 3 based on because we want to do lore and mechanics. But look forward to seeing those episodes in the future, guys. So make sure you subscribe so you can catch those. Hit that alert bell down there. You guys have anything to add to this?
I got nothing.
Got nothing. All right. All right, guys. Farewell.